Okay, this is going to sound awfully like a first world problem, but I find actually having to empty a robot vacuum's dust box to be all too much. Given that it otherwise runs autonomously or voice controlled remotely, it just doesn't cross my mind to go over there and see how the little guy's doing. So most of the time, my robot vacuums just tend to run around full of rubbish. I'm James Bruce, you're watching MakeUseOf.com reviews, and this is the Dreame Z10 Pro. And this enormous thing here is its docking station. See, Dreame heard you like vacuums, so it put a vacuum in your vacuum's docking station to vacuum up the bits from your RoboVac when it's finished vacuuming. More on that later though. But not only does the Dreame Z10 Pro automatically empty its own dust box, it's also the most powerful robot vacuum I've seen yet, at a stated 4000 PA of suction power. And it is packed full of all manner of laser scanning and 3D object sensors that make it the smartest robot vacuum yet. And yet it still can't traverse stairs. But is this the robot vacuum you've been waiting for? Quite possibly, yes. Okay, so let's start with one of the main selling points of the Dreame Z10 Pro, that auto-emptying mechanism. Inside this enormous docking station is in fact another higher powered vacuum, which connects to these holes in the base. And when the RoboVac comes home to the dock, these two align with two identical holes on the base of this, which then connect directly into the dust box. So the vacuum in the dock runs on high power for about 5 seconds. And in theory, everything gets sucked out through those holes and it's ready to go again. So what happens to the stuff that's picked up then? Well, here's where things get a little bit retro, because opening up the top here, you'll actually find a vacuum bag. Now, if you're under the age of 30, you may not even know what a vacuum bag is, because most vacuums nowadays are all bagless. But vacuums used to have bags in them, and you'd have to go change them when they got full, like this one. Now, Dreame claims that this will last up to 65 days, so just over 2 months worth of rubbish. And there is one spare included in the box, but after that, of course, you'll need to buy replacements. That said, they're usually inexpensive. However, I don't have pricing for this one yet because it's not officially out at the time of review. So we'll have to wait and see how much those are, but I don't think they'll be expensive. And while the use of a vacuum bag does feel like a little bit of a backward step, it is still a huge improvement over having to manually empty the box in this thing every single time, which you can still do if you want to for some reason, but you don't have to. Now, if you're not going to be using the auto emptying mechanism, then buying this would be a complete waste, of course. Generally, the auto empty system worked great for me, but I did find after a particularly heavy cleaning session that some bits were still hanging out of the dust box, and this didn't quite suck those up too. But generally speaking, it performed really well, and I don't have to touch the Dreame Z10 Pro unless I need to move it, which brings me neatly onto the multi-floor mapping features and the app. But first, is this a Xiaomi product? You might be surprised to learn that the Dreame Z10 Pro works with the Xiaomi Home app in much the same way that Xiaomi's own robot vacuums do, or their other subsidiary brand, Roborock. So is this a rebranded Xiaomi robot vacuum then? Not quite. It appears Dreame is actually an OEM, or original equipment manufacturer, which has supplied Xiaomi in the past, and so Xiaomi bought a chunk of equity in Dreame. Xiaomi also owns part of Roborock for 4 years prior to investing in Dreame, but believes the two can coexist. While Roborock is focused only on robot vacuums, Dreame actually has a broader spectrum of, well, all kinds of vacuums. Still, the upshot is that Dreame Vacs work with the Xiaomi Home app. If you already have the app from a previous appliance or other smart home integration, because Xiaomi does have tons of smart home kit now, you're all set. Just add a new device and it should locate the Dreame Z10 Pro over Bluetooth. It was super easy to add and it all worked smooth seamlessly for me. So how is it in use? How does it perform? The Dreame Z10 Pro is both super smart, overly cautious, and a bit mad sometimes. While the cleaning patterns generally resemble neat and ordered horizontal lines, sometimes it all goes a bit, "Ooh, look at what my darling toddler drew. Isn't it such a great brutalist interpretation of the existentialism of life?" For all of its smarts, I also found the Z10 Pro to be a bit overly cautious sometimes. An attempt was made to get underneath our freestanding bath, which I should say offers a fair few inches of clearance for this robot. It's not that tight, but after umming and ahhing for what seemed like an age, it decided against it after all and ran off indignantly. While thick carpets posed no problems, the mere existence of rugs on top of said thick carpets was apparently all too much for it to bear. Now, I apologise if this is some kind of cultural faux pas I'm unaware of, but I find rugs are great for covering up trailing cables, and yes, I do put rugs on top of carpets. That's just how crazy I am. The Z10 Pro seemed to be fundamentally opposed to this practice and wasn't able to overcome them. So then we come to the multi-map functionality. Now, one of the most interesting features for me is not merely that the Z10 can accurately map its environment, but that it can do so for multiple different floors. VSLAM, or Visual Simultaneous Localization and Mapping, using a LiDAR sensor laser scanning technology is not new. Robot vacuums have had them for quite a while, although it's not quite ubiquitous yet either. But briefly, VSLAM allows it to create a floor plan of your environment to navigate obstacles easily without having to bump into everything. It automatically detects and maps out rooms, and it allows you to direct the Dreame Z10 Pro to specific areas without picking it up and putting it down. You just say, open up the app, tell it to go clean the utility room, and it'll go there without messing around. In theory, anyway. For me, almost nothing about my kitchen stays static, and I've found consistently that moving the table, leaving a chair out, moving a potted plant, putting a box in front of the cupboard, all of these things resulted in the Dreame Z10 losing its navigational abilities, at which point it proudly announced it's lost, and then it proceeded to do a full clean again in order to map it out fresh. Ironically, on one occasion when I moved it downstairs without changing the current map, it happily said it positioned itself correctly. So assuming you don't move furniture around as much as I do, how about that mapping of multiple levels of your house? You perhaps have an upstairs and a downstairs, and that's where multi-mapping really comes into play. Just head into the map screen and then you can opt to make a new map. Pick it up, put it down at any designated start point. You can put it anywhere really, it'll just return there when it's done rather than trying to find the dock. I found the limitation to 3 maps, however, to be entirely arbitrary and frankly useless for me, but it'll probably work for you. The thing is that my house features no less than 7 different levels, landings, and sunken bedrooms. That's not a humble brag by any means. It's not because my house is particularly big. It's just bloody awkward because it was built in 1850 originally as 2 cottages, which were then combined, converted, expanded twice in the most haphazard of ways. Now, in the past, I've been resigned to the fact that any mapping functionality is either useless for me or that our robot vacuum would be limited to a single specific area only. So the limit of 3 maps doesn't really work for me, but it might for you. For most people, the Z10 will be quite happy to be picked up and put down elsewhere on any other level, as long as you're happy to tell it which map it should currently use. It'll then attempt to locate itself within that map. So you don't need to put it down in precisely the same place again, and you can still take advantage of things like specific room cleaning. You can take it upstairs, put it down, tell it to do the kids' bedroom. Still, there is a little micromanagement involved there with having to open up the list of saved floor maps and select the right one. And of course, it still can't get back to the charging dock without your help. It hasn't evolved a pair of legs just yet. I presume that's next on the list though. Instead, it'll return to the start position wherever you put it, and then helpfully ping you via the mobile app when it wants to go home to charge. So mapping capabilities out of the way, how does it perform as a vacuum? With a maximum suction power of, as I mentioned, 4000 PA, it is one of the most powerful vacuums I've seen yet, if not the most powerful robot vacuum on the market today, though I'm sure others will follow. And that means it's far more capable of taking on deep carpets. However, it still didn't pick up all the small hairs from our dog, And I'm not surprised by that. Like any robot vacuum, it isn't going to fully replace the need for an upright vacuum if you have carpets, especially if you have pets. It will, however, make daily cleanups super easy to get most of the dirt, as well as working fantastically on tiled and sort of lino floor. You should be seeing in the B-roll now how it performed in our kitchen and on the hallway, as well as on some of the deep shag pile carpet in the living room. Overall, I was really impressed with the higher power. It definitely helped. It also has an auto power mode to switch on higher suction power when it thinks it's on a carpet, though that wasn't completely reliable for me, so I did find myself micromanaging that a little bit, whacking it up into ultra mode when it was on the carpet. Unfortunately, while daily use is fine, the Dreame Z10 Pro can be far too smart for its own good sometimes. While trying to film this B-roll for showing off the spot cleaning, it had serious issues. It actually avoided the mess that we'd made, just hoovered around it.
Cleaning task completed.
Have you presumably because it thought the clumps of dirt were actually an obstacle that had to be avoided. I had to turn off the high precision obstacle avoidance mode in the end in order for it to actually clean up the mess that we'd made with it. Now again though, I should stress this isn't actually a problem that we faced in daily usage. It did a fine job there. This was only during these artificial tests that we made up just to compare the performance on different surfaces. In daily use it worked well, but if you've got a proper mess like this that you need to clean up, then you should turn off the obstacle avoidance in order to avoid your dirt being detected as an obstacle. Finally, it has a mop that can be attached down the bottom, and that can be used simultaneously with vacuuming when you're on flat, hard surfaces. It's very simple to use. Just fill it up, dampen the cloth a bit, then slide it into the back here. The Dreame Z10 Pro will automatically recognize that it's been added, and you can just adjust the flow rate of the water should you wish. As with all robot vacuums that feature this kind of mopping capability though, it's not really mopping at all. You can't add any kind of detergent, it's not a steam clean, it's literally just lightly dragging a damp cloth across the floor. And for us, it isn't really worth the effort. If you have any stubborn stains, it's not going to clean those. But if your house does get dusty, the sort of dust that you won't get picked up by vacuuming alone, then it could be worth a shot. Otherwise, I would consider it as a secondary bonus feature of the Z10 Pro rather than as a main feature. I wouldn't buy it just for the mopping function alone. And again, this isn't unique by any means. I have yet to see any robot vacuum that does a good job of mopping. If dragging a wet cloth lightly against your floor is going to be useful to you, then this will do that. One other thing, you can use this on a carpet of course, so you will need to set it to do a specific room cleaning. It doesn't appear to automatically avoid mopping on carpets, at least it didn't for me, but maybe a firmware upgrade can fix that later. So should you buy the Dreame Z10 Pro? In a market packed full of identical robot vacuums, the Dreame Z10 Pro stands out to me for a few reasons. Firstly, it uses the Xiaomi Home app, and that means you have a very solid Internet of Things platform with Google Home, Alexa support, etc. The app also offers multi-level mapping, and as long as you don't move furniture too much, this is a fantastically useful feature for normal family homes. It will work well in those. At 4000 PA, it is one of the most powerful RoboVacs out there, making it much more suitable for carpets, but again, it still won't completely replace an upright vacuum for deep cleans every now and again, especially if you have pets. But the standout feature of auto-emptying into the dock is just incredible. This changes everything, and it means that for the most part, vacuuming a large single level of your home can be an entirely hands-off process for a month or more. Finally, you don't need to babysit the vacuum. This is, without doubt, definitely my new favorite robot vacuum. All right, that's it from me. If you found this review helpful, be sure to press that like button and do consider subscribing for more gadget reviews from all of us over at makeuseof.com. Until next time.